Norm, which war did you serve in?
Vietnam,
And which branch of the service?
United States Marine Corps,
A proud Marine. What was your highest rank?
Sergeant E5.
Can you tell me in which general locations you served?
While in Vietnam or
Yep.
all together? Quang Tri, that was our base camp in northern I Corps up near the DMZ.
Norm, how did you get in the service? Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
Ashfield, Massachusetts.
So can you tell me what made you decide to enlist and why did you pick the Marine Corps?
My motivation. I was doing very poorly in college, Greenfield Community College. And it seems like most of the guys in my engineering classes were attempting to get good grades so they wouldn't be drafted. And doing so poorly, I just needed a break. And I knew the Marine Corps recruiter personally. He was from Ashfield. So I went to see Clem Record, and he's a good salesman, a good recruiter. And I wanted to join the Marine Corps because it was tough, because Marines always seem to have more pride, more gutzma. So I joined the Marine Corps and left in February of 1968 for Parris Island.
Can you tell me what Parris Island was like?
Not here. It was as difficult and as demanding as advertised. It's quite a bit different now. Through the years, it's changed and become more friendly. But back then, it was all business. And quite frankly, when we got to Parris Island, I was as terrified as I was when we got off the plane and stepped into the runway in Vietnam, in Da Nang. It was frightening. It was quite an experience. The drill instructors were constantly shouting, screaming right in our face. And you go in, the first thing right away is to get your hair cut, and it was just a zoom right over the top, and everything came off and pulling, and you didn't talk unless you were spoken to. There was absolutely no chit-chat with your fellow Marines. There were 70 of us together in our recruitment platoon, and we did everything together. And so it was quite an eye-opener. But by the time we graduated from boot camp and actually were called a Marine, you begin to understand a little more what the philosophy was, breaking us all down. We all looked alike. We all acted alike. And if there were the fat bodies or those that for one reason or another, maybe psychological, just plain couldn't deal with it, couldn't handle it, well, they were weeded out. And I suppose that the drill instructors and the senior drill instructors had a pretty good idea of who was going to make it and who wasn't. And every phase of it, whether it was throwing you off a 20-foot diving platform, simulating jumping off a ship, or drown proofing, or the rifle range, or the long marches and the running and running and running. Through those different phases, a lot of them would drop out. So out of 70, I would guess a good 10 or 12 didn't make it at all. And 3 or 4 or 5 were set back 2 weeks to go through that phase again. If they didn't qualify on the rifle range, they were set back to a platoon just coming in. So it
long
was
did
a
it
lot of
take?
pride, when you
did
got out.
graduate?
Yeah, it was
How
12 weeks. 12 weeks of boot camp.
Was it mostly physical training, or was there classroom training also?
There was classroom. Yeah, we would sit sometimes in an outside arena, sometimes in a classroom similar to this. We didn't take notes. There was no test, except each one of us was given a little red notebook, and we had to memorize absolutely every word in it. The Marine Corps philosophy, the Marine Corps history, all of the ranks of the Navy, keeping in mind that the Marine Corps is a department under the Department of the Navy. So we had to learn all the Navy ranks as well, and again the history. And so while we get out of the mess hall and standing at attention waiting for everyone, you had that little notebook out, and you better keep your eyes on it and study. So periodically we were given a test on those things, and we had to pass a test to get through our recruitment to be a Marine.
Where did you go after you graduated from boot camp?
They piled us all on a bus, and we went to North Carolina to Camp Geiger. And that's where we learned more of the weaponry, learned how to throw grenades, live grenades, crawl through mud under barbed wire with live machine gun fire over your head, learned how to shoot a mortar, a flamethrower, all of those kinds of things, offhand shooting with 60 caliber machine gun. So we learned all of that advanced weaponry, and then from there we went home on leave for 30 days, and then each of us were given orders to wherever the Marine Corps wanted us to go.
And where were your orders?
In my case, they sent me to San Diego to communication school.
Did you have a choice in that, or did the Marine Corps say you're going to go to communications?
No, in their wisdom, they separated us by our background. You know, we would do a little bio before joining the Marine Corps. And they would look at it, and they saw that I had some college and had graduated from high school, some aptitude. So that was something a little more complicated. I went in on the buddy system with a good friend of mine, and his father was an accountant, and he was good with numbers, and he went to accounting school and spent his whole entire time in Washington, D.C. in accounting. And I went to San Diego and learned voice radio. I was a voice radio operator. I learned every radio procedure and how to operate every radio the Marine Corps had. At that time, some of it was very sophisticated, including teletype. We had to pass typing. And of course, we had to learn all the procedures and how to fix them, how to treat them, and how to set up all the big antennas and so forth.
When you were in communication school in San Diego, did you know that you'd be going to Vietnam?
Not in the beginning. We had no idea at the beginning, but about halfway through, I think it was like an 8-week course, we pretty much knew. And as a matter of fact, I can say that we had the first class that 100% of us volunteered for Vietnam. So we went as a class not directly to Vietnam, but we were given the distinction of, and they bragged about it, you know, this class, 100% of them volunteered to go to Vietnam.
Wow.
We probably would have gone there anyway.
You volunteered? Your whole class volunteered to go to Vietnam?
We did, yeah.
Did you go as a class?
After our graduation, we again got orders. My orders were to go to jungle warfare school, and
Where was that?
that was in Camp Pendleton, a little further north in California, and that was interesting because it was both an aptitude type thing, and after 2 or 3 weeks, they started to separate us. I was a sharpshooter. I was at the top of my class in radio school, and I was sorted out to be a recon Marine. And that was a little scary because even Marines are afraid of, well, I won't say afraid of, but respect recon Marines. When we went to advanced infantry training, there were a lot of other battalions at Camp Geiger as well for different reasons. And at night, we'd lay there in our bunks and we'd hear this boom, 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 boom on the pavement. And it would get closer and closer, and then we'd hear recon, recon, and all we could picture are these guys with bayonets in their mouth, you know, and holy Christ, those crazy guys, recon, you know, they're nuts. They're all crazy, man. They'll kill you. And here I am at Camp Pendleton, singled out for recon. And it didn't quite sink in at the time. We did a lot of jungle training, learning how to observe spider traps where the North Vietnamese army would pop up, shoot at you, and then trapdoor would go back down and you'd never find it. Looking for a lot of the sign of the enemy and so forth. And that was pretty specialized. And we would go through all of these mock training exercises to simulate jungle warfare. And then from there, orders to Vietnam, and went home and had my leave.
How much leave did you get before you had to go overseas?
20 days. And then
Now, Norm, when you were in your communication class, you said that your whole class volunteered to go to Vietnam, but then you went to jungle warfare school. Did your whole class go, or did you start splitting up at that point?
they split us all up depending on
What you
where they needed. That most of them went to infantry. Every platoon in every, like 9-1, every infantry unit had a radio operator for the commanding officer in the platoon, and they went through a lot of radio operators because, you know, we had an antenna that long sticking up, and it's a great target. And the life expectancy of a radio operator was pretty short.
When you went to Vietnam, were you the only one from your group? Did you go with anybody you know, or you went as an individual?
I was the only one that went to 3rd Recon. There were other recon, the guys that went through the training with me assigned to recon, but when we actually got our orders, well, let me put it, yeah, that's true. To jump ahead a little bit, by the time we got to Vietnam, I was the only one that got in that 6x to go to Quang Tri. So I was the only recon, and they would drop guys off as they went along.
Where did you land when you first flew into Vietnam?
Well, we went from, I tried to remember exactly where we left from, but I'm pretty sure that it was back to Camp Pendleton, and we took a bus to the 29 Palms or somewhere, and flew on Continental Airlines. They were contracting with the military to ferry troops into Vietnam. And we went to Okinawa, refueled, and we stayed on the plane. And there weren't any first class, can we get you another drink, sir? There was none of that. It was pretty somber. We slept and kind of nervous chit-chat. When we went into Da Nang, which is about 90 miles south of Quang Tri, it was raining so hard. I've never seen rain like that. It was monsoon. And just getting our duffel bags, getting off the plane and heading into the headquarters, the big tent, the receiving tent, was really something, because you can hear the mortar in the background. And it wasn't like Camp Geiger. This was the real deal, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, I'm in Vietnam. Damn.
What was your first impression when you landed? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was like, I'm here. We're really here. I can't believe it. And then you go into the tent and, they're checking your shot card, and you lay in this bunk until it was quite late at night when we got there. So in the first thing in the morning, torrential rain. It was like biting rain. And then they, okay, such and, they go down through the whole list of guys, and you go out to that 6x, which is a big open-ended truck. There was no canvas on the top or anything. And you were completely drenched within 10 seconds. And, they threw you a rifle and a magazine, and my name came up, and I got in the 6x and sat down in the rain in the back of that 6x, and away we went up the muddy road. And they'd stop at a base somewhere and call 2 or 3 names, and Camp Carroll, Dong Ha, Con Tien, and Quang Tri. So I got off at Quang Tri, had no clue where to go, and it's raining, and you're soaking wet and shivering. You got this duffel bag, and you're scared and hungry, and so you go to report in, and they assigned me to Charlie Company, 3rd Recon. I reported to Charlie Company, and they gave me my team, which is 3 Charlie 2, 3rd Battalion, Charlie Company, 2nd Team. So they had the street, like Charlie Company was all this mud path. And I went down all the way almost to the end, the second to the last one. It was a tent, like a World War II tent, a great big canvas tent with a mud floor, and opened a flap and walked in and announced myself. And Recon is a special breed. You don't want to call it hazing, but they treat you as a non-entity. They don't know you. They don't care about you. You're not one of them. And until you are, you're kind of on the outside. So I had this bunk, which is, again, a World War II canvas, scissors, bottom, cot, with a poncho liner, which is a very thin camouflage, pretend to be blanket. And I had my tray with a wire going through it, with a fork and a big spoon and a cup. And now I'm a Recon Marine. And they taught us everything. I was the new guy in 3 Charlie 2. And every morning, with my pack, put a sandbag in there, about 70 pounds and run 5 miles. And then again in the afternoon. And then go out with the team in the morning and learn immediate action drills. A recon team is 5 members. 5-member team. And each man has a designated spot in your walking order once you get in the jungle. And being the radio operator, I was right behind the team leader. And so if you do have contact, you have to learn how to peel away and what to do and where your area of scope is to look and what your responsibilities are. You go over all the first aid stuff and who carries what and how to pack your pack. You each get a case of C rations to take with you. Obviously, you don't carry a case of C rations. A typical mission would be 5 days, 5 to 7 days. And most of us carried nothing more than like fruit cocktail, peaches, whatever fruit there was, whatever can of fruit there was, and pound cake. And you tape it together, tape them end to end with electrical tape, and learn how to pack your pack so there's no noise. You can't have anything rattling around in your pack. So most of what you carried, we each carried 5 canteens of water. That's 1 canteen of water a day, and that's all you're going to get. We each carried 25 magazines of ammo, and what we did is take the magazines. They hold 20 rounds each. We put 18 in so that it prevented or helped prevent jamming. And again, with electrical tape, tape them end to end, and then put them in your. We had a harness. We learned how to make your own harness so that you could get your canteens of water around you and your 25 rounds of magazine taped end to end, so that if you are in a firefight, you take the magazine out of your weapon and just turn it around and put the other one back in. When you're done with that one, you just throw it out, grab another one, and put it in. And each man carried smoke canister, about 3 grenades that we would clip on our harness. I had the radio. It's a PRC 25, and I had a fresh battery, a brand new battery in it, and those batteries come in a very thick plastic sealed case, so I had to carry an extra battery with me in my pack. And you got to be real good, because a good radio operator can change frequencies, volume, and everything without looking. I first, when we go up to the chopper pad to be inserted, I'm communicating with the chopper pilot, so that's one frequency. And another frequency would be for the relay station once we're inserted in the jungle. And then a third frequency would be for fixed wing if they came in, so I could talk to the pilot.
Would you have to switch back and forth
Yeah.
between these all the time?
Yeah. Well, not that often would we have. If we had fixed wing that came in, we're in trouble. So we had those things in our pack. We had a little bottle of bug juice, military bug juice that we kept in our pouches. We each carried several different types of battle dressing in our pants pouch, and a tube of camouflage paint. We would paint up before we went out, and we had long sleeve camouflage utilities with handball gloves with the fingers cut off. The handball gloves were particularly good if we were going out to the Central Highlands and we were in the elephant grass. Elephant grass is about 20 feet tall. You can hardly walk through it, and it's sharp as a razor. So we kind of part it. The recon Marines out in the jungle are not like World War II, where the guys are hacking with a machete. You know, the whole idea of recon is to be completely unseen, unheard. The whole we would go to intelligence, go to G2 to get our orders, and they would give us 2 maps of where we were going in the jungle. And they would pick a place, any place. Each 1,000 by 1,000 meters is a click, they called it. So we would be responsible for, say, 10 clicks. And pick any spot and make a mark and call it nuts. So you don't give coordinates when you're talking on the radio. You give from nuts down to right 1/2, and then they could tell exactly where each team was out in the jungle. So I had a map, and the squad leader, the team leader, had a map. Your point of walking is your point man. The point man, everybody taped the ends of their barrel with electrical tape. Electrical tape was a good thing in Vietnam. Good thing we had it. And it kept water and mud out of the barrel. And the point man always had a string around the end of the barrel and up over his shoulders so that he could always walk like this and be ready, so that if we did initiate contact, he's right there. And he would peel off one way. The second guy is the team leader, and then followed by the radio operator, and then a rifleman, and then the guy in the back is the M79 man. That's with a short barrel and with a high explosive canister in it. And that guy could knock the top off of a flagpole from 1,000 yards. I swear, I've never seen anybody like this guy. And he'd be responsible for the rear, kind of making sure no one
You 5
is
guys
falling.
that were comprised a team, were you all cross-trained in everybody else's job, or no, you just worried about your own job?
Well, we all knew how to use the M79, you know. I mean,
What was the weapon that you carried at that time?
Well, unlike what we qualified for in boot camp, which was the M14, we carried the M16s. And in 1968, there were still a lot of bugs. You know, they jammed a lot, particularly when it's wet, and you know, you're out there in the monsoon. And
So you actually went into Vietnam in 1968?
yeah. So we get back from intelligence, and then, you know, you learn why you're going out to this area. Suspected Vietnamese movement, stockpiles, something they've seen from an airplane, or the infantry needs to go up into this area. They wanted to know if there were any bunkers, how many VC. Well, we're Northern I-Corps, Northern South Vietnam, where we spent most of our time. There wasn't any VC. It was all North Vietnamese Army, which compared to the United States Marine Corps, they were the best trained army in the world at the time. I mean, they were the real deal. You know, they wore better uniforms than we did, except that they were there. They could be there for 5 years. You know, those kids would go down and they were there. And, so we would learn where we're going. pick a landing zone where the chopper would get you in, and we'd agree on, at the end of 5 days, at such and such a time, here's where you're going to be extracted from. And so we get that the night before we were going out on a mission, and we'd get our C rations and pack our pack. And boy, it's funny how after 45 years it
doesn't go away.
Whew, boy, I didn't think I'd be like this. Thinking back on, the letters that you would write, you didn't want to scare your mom and dad, and so you didn't want to go on a mission tomorrow, and the area really sucks, and there's suspected of bunker complexes, and you don't say any of that, you please send more bone chicken or something, and so you go up in the morning, and you're all painted up, and you got everything you need, and then the chopper comes, and you check your frequency, and the 5 of us, most of the time we went on with the Huey, which is an open-ended with the runners, the slicks. We call them slicks. And on each side there was a gunner. Each of them had a 50 caliber machine gun. And then we went out with a gunship. The gunship had rockets, canisters, one on each side, and they had a 50 cal machine gun plus the, it seems like they had something else, but anyway, nobody rode on the gunship. They would go in with us, but they wouldn't go in the LZ with us. They would stay up and go around, and it was always the team leader's final decision whether you went in or not. When we were going into the LZ, you try and go in quick and get in there. If it turned out to be a hot LZ and we were taking fire, then you'd abort. If not, you go in, we dump out of both sides of the chopper, and go on the edge of the jungle. And if everything is secure, then it was up to me to wave them off and get them out of there as soon as we could, and then we just get lost. We have to get in the jungle as quickly as we could, because if we were seen or heard going in, they'd say chopper over there, and they'd head to that opening. So we would get lost in the jungle, and then kind of regroup and decide where we were going from there and begin our mission.
How many missions would you do? Like, how many days would you be on mission and then have a time off before you go out again?
We'd go on a mission for 5 or 7 days, and we'd be back in the area, back in a base camp, and pull guard duty and do what we had to do, whatever duties we had, probably for 4 days, sometimes 3 days, sometimes 1 day, but typically we'd be in the back for 4 days, and they would rotate missions. I'm credited with 14 long-range missions, which we were out for extended periods.
What's extended mean?
Week and a half, 10 days, yeah, 7 to 10 days. And it could be less, but long range can also mean that we're way outside of the scope of range where recon would normally go. In other words, they would tell us, you don't have any support, you're on your own, man. So get in, do your thing, and get out. We've been in areas, Cambodia. We've crossed the Ben Hai River. In other words, we've been in North Vietnam. And for the purpose of determining how big the supplies might be. Report, particularly along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That's where they're bringing trucks in, and they're stockpiling rice and ammo and stuff. We would go in typically and find them, and then spend our time observing them, making notes. You don't have to worry about the radio because you're way outside of radio range. So you can't call in fixed wing. You have to be at a certain location because they're coming in to get you, and you got to be there. If you're not there, that can be a problem. And unfortunately, recon teams sometimes would just never be heard from again. If we do have contact, then I call in for immediate extraction. In the rare event that we get a prisoner, and remember the tents I told you about, the easiest way to get a plywood hooch, we call them, with a plywood floor and a tin roof over our head, would be to get a prisoner. So if you want a hooch, you get a prisoner. But shortly there, that lasted for maybe, I was in the tent for a month and a half or so, and plywood became more abundant, and they started building them.
So you said that you've got 14 long-range missions. Did you have other short-range ones?
Well, a short-range mission would be a typical 5-day they would take you either in on a 6x to Contian, and you'd walk in from there, looking for enemy, looking for the NVA where they may not know there was any there, or they wanted us to verify the mapping. Is the water good? Are the maps correct? Landing zones, or it looks like we had a landing zone here, but can choppers actually land there? Or do we need to clear a landing zone first and go in on the ropes and rappel in and go from there?
Did you operate out of Quang Tri your whole year in Vietnam?
Yeah.
So after every mission, you'd go back to your base at Quang Tri?
That's right. Well, we go into Van de Grift Air Base. A lot of times the chopper would bring us to Vandy, which was probably 10 miles away or so. And that's where they had a lot of choppers, and they were all going in and out of there. That's where they housed them. So they would bring us in there, and then we would get a chopper to go out to our destination, and they'd bring us back to Vandy, and then we'd catch another chopper to, they called it Stud, Van de Grift base. And they'd bring us back to Quang Tri, which was our base camp. And we had a motor pool, but it was recon.
How big would you say your base at Quang Tri was?
Well, it was
thousands of men?
No, it was a battalion. So we had 4 companies and that in a big motor pool. But we didn't, and this always the danger of being overrun, and so we all had shifts, guard duty that we had to do. Everybody had to do that, and we had a mess hall that was very, very similar to the MASH program. There wasn't great differences in equipment. They made improvements in ammunition and weaponry, but a lot of the equipment that we had in Vietnam was the equipment that they had in Korea. Very similar, the tents and the cots. The whole time I was in recon, we had those canvas cots.
Were you always with the same group? Was your recon
our team?
The same 5? So you stayed with that entire team?
That's right.
So you must have gotten pretty close.
Until, yeah, you do. You get to know exactly each other's idiosyncrasies and likes and dislikes and how to take care of each other. My life depended on each other. And in the infantry, as commonly known, there's a lot of drugs, a lot of pot. In recon, it's absolutely not tolerated. There will no marijuana. Marines were not allowed alcohol in Vietnam. We were the only branch of the service. Geez, the Air Force had clubs, for crying out loud, with hamburgers and French fries. We went down to Qua Viet, down by the South China Sea, and to us it was a perk. After, we went on ambush missions at night, and we wore white long johns because the sand was pure white. And there was a lot of problems with the NVA coming in towards the Air Force base with mortar, So we'd go out at night, all night long, on ambush missions. And one night we were able to cross the river and went into the club, and we couldn't believe it. Air conditioning and waitresses with round eyes and steak and hamburgers and French fries and beer and alcohol. See, are we in Vietnam? An hour away, and we're eating condensed everything. We had no fresh milk or fruit or any of that good stuff. We did have hot meals in the mess hall, but it was all reconstituted everything.
Well, your year, then you went out on a lot of missions together as that team. Can you tell me about one or two memorable missions that you went on?
Well, there were a lot, and like I said, the whole idea was to avoid detection. That was our main job. And our rule of thumb is, if we're out in the jungle, we typically would stay off of the main trails. This is their backyard, not ours. And what you don't want to do is to have a confrontation on a trail, because with 5 of us, we're probably going to lose. If there's water, we liked it. Hated it, but I mean, it's quieter in the water, and a lot of times you've got triple canopy, meaning that you get filtered sun. It's 100 degrees, and it's so humid, you're soaking wet. I took at least 2 big salt tablets every day because I perspire a lot. I always have. And so you'd walk in water if you could, because it was less work. And then, you'd come out, and that little bottle of bug juice that you had, its purpose was not to put on because the mosquitoes might bite you. It was because if you put a drop of it on you, the leeches that were all over you would just drop off. So a little drop of that and the leech would drop, and you're pulling them, they won't come off, but just a little drop of that bug juice and they drop off. But our rule of thumb is, in the jungle, if we saw 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 gooks, we call them gooks, NVA, particularly if they had uniforms on. If they had a pack on and a rifle, then take them out. Blow them away. Take everything off, any patches, anything in their pockets, everything. Put them off to the side of the trail, cover them up with whatever you come, and then get the hell out. If there's only 1 of them, and he doesn't have a pack on, it probably means that he's out collecting roots or some damn thing for dinner. And we'd try and get a general direction of where he's going and what he's doing so that we could find a bunker complex. So you kind of have to be careful if you're gonna what we call blow them away and kill them. That's a lot of noise. And if it's not just 3 guys passing through and they're just walking point for 80 more, then you're in a world of hurt. So we really had to pick and choose when we would ambush somebody. And at night, all 5 of us would sit down and lean against each other. You never take your pack off. You put your rifle over your lap, and I had the radio, the handset, and every hour the relay station would say, Moleskin, Moleskin, sit rep, situation report.
Was your call sign Moleskin?
Our team, every team had a name, and I just thought of that was one of them, Moleskin. And I would key the handset twice, and it sounds like squelch. And that lets them know that at 7 o'clock, all is well. And then we would give my handset to somebody else, and then I'd try to get a little sleep. And at the end of that hour, then you give it to somebody else. And in the morning, we'd have a can of fruit cocktail or something and bury the cans. Never any cigarettes or any of that stuff in the jungle. And we'd fulfill our mission, try not to get lost. It's tough. You didn't have a lot of landmarks, big outcropping or maybe a water or something, but we did pretty well. We could pretty much tell exactly where we were. And then just barely before dark, the team leader would say, maybe 200 feet away, he'd say, see that high spot over there? And he didn't say, see that high spot over there? He'd just kind of nod to it, and everybody would have to acknowledge. He says, study it, that's where we're going. So after dark, we would very, very slowly, cautiously go from here to there. And more than once, in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, where we were would be hellacious noise, grenades and small arms fire. They knew where we were. And if we hadn't moved after dark, they'd have never found us again.
Did you do that every time?
Every time. Almost
yeah.
Every time. I mean, there were those situations where we were in grave danger. We had been spotted. We were in a bad area. We would pick our high ground, put a claymore mine out, which is semicircular, and it has explosive C4 in it with hundreds of small ball bearings. And you go like that, you run a wire back, and you go like that, and it just, the big blast goes out. So you set 2 claymores and hope you don't get hit at night. And sometimes the choppers can't fly. They can't come out and get you. And if you are spotted, do the best you can, man. You don't dig foxholes, and you got your semicircle, and you got grenades and your claymores, and yeah. Just that I can tell you about the incident where I was awarded the Navy Cross, but I'm not sure I can get through it.
Give it a try. We can stop and take a break if you need to.
like I said, it's amazing after, 45 years, how seems like you think about it, and nightmares, and God, what would their life be like if they'd lived, and it's just natural, I guess, when in war type thing. Well, they sent us to an area. Well, first of all, my team got back from a mission. It was like 4 PM. And the team next to us, 3 Charlie 1, came over and, Norm, we need help. You got to go with us. You got to go with us. The radio operator had a broken finger or broken hand or something. I don't know what exactly happened. But he couldn't go, so they needed me to go out with him. And of course, I knew the guys really well. And Norm, you got to go. You got to go. So I didn't even bother to take a shower in the rancid water that we used. I just got my C rationed and rations and repacked, and went over the map with the guys.